Welcome, Capricorn, to your timeless love variant reading, where we discuss anything that would like to be discussed in regards to however love may show up in your life, whether you're single, partnered up, married, divorced, anticipatory of a partner, whatever. Please remember, Capricorn, that these messages may provide universal justice if you're here in Capricorn being in your Sun, Rising, and or Jupiter position. However, if you're here in Capricorn being Moon, Mercury, and or Venus, you may be in search of emotional redemption, where I will ask that you seek the link to in the description box below to my sister channel and see how the content over there may answer to what it is that you may be in search for. All right, as always, please remember that past, present, and future energetical timelines could come forth of resonancy within a reading. Use your discernment to take all of that which belongs to you and to leave the rest behind. I do apologize in advance for any kind of distractions that are possibly happening in the background. It's a lot of like a lot of see somebody tripping, falling over their feet a lot. The vertigo is off and balance. Someone might be in the rabbit hole of the conspiracy topic of extraterrestrial beings. So, I mean, that's right up the rabbit hole of my curiosities. I love that. I love those conversations. I love reading on that energy. But anyway, we're here to understand this death card, the release factor, in understanding that you may have been catapulted into a warp hole and a wormhole of some kind, and trying to figure out how to get yourself out of it. To remember, you are the answer that which the warp has asked you to enter in. Okay, you may have said yes to wanting to enter. That's giving consent to the situation happening. However, once you're in it and you feel that you no longer want to be in it, remember that you are also the answer to get yourself out of this. All right, you're your own release. Let go of the fear that keeps you thinking that you need to hold on to it. All right. Unfortunately, there are other individuals where this card is very literal. They have seen death a lot in their life. It has crossed in their path a lot, whether it's affected the people that are living with them or who are the closest to them, or they know people closest to them who keep coming across death, or they just see their consciousness always being on the lookout to deathly situations, and it's taking a toll on this individual or individuals, and it's hard to find a release factor when you feel that you are the release factor. You're not legitimately seeking out to want to pay attention to these things. You're not making up your own synchronicities. You are resilient in wanting to get rid of it, and I think that's the point that may need to be questioned as to why you're so diligent in wanting to get rid of it, or why you're so diligent to fear it, because again, it will focus more so your intention on yourself, not that it has anything to do with you, but why the energy wants to entertain you. So quote unquote, what's so special about you, right? So that specialness is to trigger some sort of discomforts within you so that we can address why you're uncomfortable. Once we understand the things that are uncomfortable, we must understand a way to dissect them away from you in order for you to gain comfort again. All that is a resurrection, all that is a rebirth, all that is death, all that is acceptance, all that is a release and a letting go. Yeah. Three of Swords. All right, the heartbreak, letting go. It's really hard once the heart has been attacked to understand what letting go means, because how do you understand what to let go of when you don't know you're holding on to it, right? So it's a vicious lesson that death provides. If you study death, or maybe even death doulas, they have an appeal to me because I enjoy the idea of easing consciousness on a massive transition that's happening. And most often than not, these transitions are occurring on traumatic situations, and I'm all about making that transition an easier sort of acceptance for the consciousness that is triggered with this trauma at that moment. Four of Swords. Yeah, I was just, the Four of Swords reminds me of that coffin energy in traditional tarot, all right? And I was just going to say, if we're going to talk about, like, death in its very literal term, I am not a person that compromises well with the idea of individuals ending in a box, and whatever that is, the ceremony about it, like, that is whatever. I know that I'm going to trigger several situations, several people in stating that. It's not a personal affliction. This is about honoring the energies that I not only embody, or that I use to communicate through, so that I can deliver a message through high vibrational causes and low vibrational understanding. And understanding that duality that comes from oneness has to naturally accept that there is a cycle that has to happen. And boxing in anything is never a good idea in that regard. Putting focused intention on something that's supposed to have a natural intention is never a good idea. It's about also taking that story of what you may not understand and looking at the things that you try to understand, because it's easier to show up for them. For some, not even for all. It's not easy for every parent to show up for the child and understand how to silently maneuver in building confidence within the child, knowing that you have to kind of like stand back and not capture every fall this child is making. You have to accept that the child has to fall, and learning different degrees of showing up to a living thing being a thing, growing, becoming an identity, becoming something more than what it is already. And understanding that in that sector of light is to also appreciate how we need to bring a positive twist to what we think is a triggered feeling of sadness when we look at death. For those of you, and for those of like myself who but became attuned with Reiki, and I am a master Reiki practitioner, I have understood the assignment, I guess if you want to put it that way, of understanding how the magical mysticism of not saying anything operates, and how to try to bring language to law of attraction without immediately harming it, because it's not, again, an organic process. The universe operates in absolutely wonderful ways in how chaotic it is with the Five of Wands energy. And I like that the Five of Wands energy in this deck is green, because it's to balance the energy that can be so daunting to accept at stages of life, which is, in this reading, very literal, death. And the ending of things, the ending of relationships, the acceptance of that. The understanding that, you know, when people are still alive and they're no longer together after like so many years, and let's say they've built families, like it's like the sensitive part of me is like, how do you even move on from that? How do you move on creating lives like you know? And then I think about people who've lost loved ones, and even myself included, that how do you accept never being able to tangibly hold them again? But the moment I speak upon their energy is so alive as if it was knowing that they're in the other room in the same house. Keeping that alive is putting a positive twist to what we think are negative situations, because once we depict and get very nuanced with quote-unquote negative situations, we end up being forced to look at the positive situation. And one is that we're even looking at the situation. We're making our business to get gritty with the darkness so that we can learn to accept why it's there and what we can do to fortify that unanimous feeling that may come when we share the idea that we may be in darkness. But when we maybe change our perspective and understand that darkness is an absence of light, then maybe we can just accept it a little bit more, because we know that light will come, just like the sun will come. We have Page of Wands, Invention. I mean, interesting. And invention wants to come through. I mean, I think it's time to more or less reinvent yourself, okay? Like, I'm a huge fan of resistance, huge fan of triggering. Please remember when I say these things, I'm also a master healer. I have the power to heal, pardon me. I have the power to ease the mind, to soften the heart. And on the contrary, I also enjoy triggering to if that's what it's called, to induce a mind to figure out what's bothering within them. I am not a bully in doing so. I believe that if the conversation is dictated to the fact that you want to have the conversation with me, I am immediately not the bully. Just like if you're listening here to these messages, I'm not meant to trigger the individual who I supposedly knew was going to trigger, like, going to sit there and click on this reading. Like, no, for that, I don't give a shit who the fuck you are. As my own Seven of Wands meeting that resilience in the face, like, I don't give a shit who it is at the end of the day that's listening to these readings. But at the same time, I give a shit to who listens out to these readings, because if there's anyone who really feels these energies, that feels alone to understand the essence I'm trying to provide while triggering as well, that there are things that we can release and let go, so that way we are not stuck in the heartache, we're not stuck in the swords of damnation and the stress of what life inevitably provides, you know. The Chariot, progress. Yeah, I mean, this progress has to be made from the fact that you recognize that you are in essence. You know, you're not meant to be perfect. You can have a quote-unquote negative mind and be a good person, because you're not acting on these negative things. And what we can do is force the mind to accept with heavy discipline here at this point. I would have to say, into accepting the narrative and how your ego wants to maneuver in this world, because the ego will then be forced to accept the choices that you're making and forced to accept the consequences of those choices. And if you are wise in your actions, because you've learned about your inactions and also your actions, then you are better at gaining a wiser track for yourself and building better relationships, because you are making progress with something that's existential. And you may not have known it, come across this reading, that this reading was, I guess, going to go the way that it did and to cover the aspect of love. But there is a wormhole that you Capricorns are going through at this time that you may or may not know. I'm not sure. However, wherever it is, it's putting a contradiction to some of the relationships and friendships that you're building at this time, or also the lack of connections that you're having at this time. There's something about like teamwork that you need to understand a bit better, that it should come from not only a progressive state, that it's going to intend to involve everyone, but that it doesn't just form because of your idea. You know, that you wanted to like kind of cover up your karma because you realized you didn't show up to a friendship of some kind, and so you kind of like try to forgo all those little tidbits of issues by coming up with this grand idea that's supposed to kind of like take care of all your little mishaps and mistakes. And it's really not that fair. It's not fair to building a compromisable relationship between two people, with yourself and another individual included. There's a cohesiveness that you desire very much so, very deeply, because in all this chaos, the green is very important here. The green is so important in the detrimental cards of energy here, where it's over the Five of Wands, which is a spiritual problem. Seven of Wands, even more of an ego problem. And the Page of Wands is like, I'm just over here trying to intend the things that I internalize or internally feel. Because damn, if I bring awareness to the topic of death in my life, it's a very detailed topic. And because I can see perhaps that literal judgment is not casted on a lot of people, I feel like an outcast. And that's where we kind of go in the beginning of the reading, where I feel like someone doesn't understand, why do you think that energy has chosen you? What is so special about you? And we have to try to understand that specialness without you feeling that it's fear needing to come up with the answer to that. That there's a positive thing to the situation, that we can address these quote-unquote negative situations with a positive sense of control. So judgments here, this is action from the universe. So the things that you experience is just going to be more intense. This isn't going to be very literal about how death shows up in your life. This isn't this dark. All right, this is not about stat reading. All right, this is universal justice. And this universal justice is taking action for you to see the power as to why the darkness is so loud in your life. But latching on to the light of the situation, of giving yourself the answer as to why it's so loud. Introspection, Eight of Cups. The thing you need to understand why the emotions are so loud and why they have you move away or closer to individuals. Why relationships are hard for you to maintain. Why ultimately emotional subject matters are not your forte in relationships. But you blame other people for that instead of looking at the introspection of self. Seven of Pentacles, vision. There's a lot of seven energy in this reading, all right? Understanding why the ego is as devilish as she or he is, okay, for oneself. Someone could use a hug. I'm hearing that someone regrets getting the vaccine. We have iron. This is very tied to the blood running through you at this time because of the heartache message. Okay, cleansing the blood at this time. Watching out for those hormone-ingested meats if you're still a meat eater. So a lot of sexual trauma coming off from this card, ladies and gentlemen, all those in between and beyond. All I want to say is that if you're triggered by that, please check out my description box below to make an appointment with me. Alright, we have sugar. Yeah. I mean, some of you are hiding behind a toxic diet, you know. It's sad because your ethereal energy is very loud. It's very magnetic as to appealing a lot of individuals. It's like, it's an honor to work with you, Capricorn, but at the same time, and it's a but because it invalidates what I just began saying, you are not trustworthy. And there's reasons for that, and that's what I'm saying. If any of that former message resonated as to that iron card, then it's not your fault. It's just energies. It's not your ego's fault. It's not the decisions that you made. It's not the decisions that you didn't make. It's something bigger than that. I'm hearing the word relinquish. We have the uncreated. Yeah, it's like this has to do with energies that are not in a physical realm. You can't touch, see them, feel them. It has nothing to do with your sensory. But in order to heal them is to make sense of your tangible energies now. The things that you can feel, touch, consume, ingest, intertwine yourself with. Become smarter making the decisions who to have sex with, how many people you're going to have sex with, how much time goes in between one partner and to the other if you're going to have multiple partners. Allowing your body to cleanse itself and go through the sugaring stages, I'm hearing. The sugaring stages, how cute. Yeah, one thing can be sweet at one point, but then too much could be too much, right? Too much of the sweetness can give you rotten teeth, like in that idea. The sugaring process. Very interesting, Capricorn. I mean, the energies are very loud. They need to be shuffled through. I always say that when I end up shuffling, because this is dense. This is very specific energy. This goes down to the very vibration of that which it is that you are consciously and unconscious of. Like, this is everything that culminizes itself to being dark and light within you, as to what needs to make sense as to how profitable your relationships are with yourself and other people. This is an ego problem as much as it is a heart problem. Yeah, with the Four of Pentacles. Because you're holding on to certain things and then not letting go of other things. But then you find an understanding so vast and so broad that it's so magnetized to and magnetic to want to be around you, to have conversations with you. Because you have some things to offer. The Ten of Wands here, all right? But at the same time, you're on a solo mission that... you're not being honest about that, You're not going to build honest relationships. Yeah, ego problem. Your energy, the devil. The Devil series on my channel talks about where the ego doesn't know if it's of light or if it's of darkness, so it wants to play a game. It's exactly what's happening to your own inner vibrations at this time. You need to understand it's not the ether that paves the path that you walk. It is you that pave the path that you walk. When something doesn't go your way, you can't blame outside energies. I'm feeling the throat chakra like close up because it's too much truth for someone to swallow. Nine of Pentacles and Death card here again. But you're stepping out to the other side, which is beautiful. All right, once you go through this pain of your throat chakra, just showing up and saying, yeah, I don't know how to speak my truth, because that's ultimately what it is. You don't know how to speak your truth. You don't know how to speak your emotions, Capricorn. It's a very Capricorn trait. It's not a downfall. It is a power to recognize and power to self-discipline yourself, as the sun here is kind of illuminating the devil here, and causes the devil to not be able to permeate its shadow onto anything, let alone you, because you have control of how to satisfy it, and for how to not make decisions that affect ultimately other people, or is the demise or of yourself or other people. Lots of work being done in this energetical timeline. This is like I'm hearing a 3-year timeline. This is, I don't know where you are in this journey. It's very young in the immaturity of understanding with the Page of Pentacles here. It's a very slow process. Someone also doesn't want to really like go or expedite this. It's like not in Wands energy, because they want to learn about everything along the way, which is so fascinating about you, Capricorn. You want to learn about every detail that you can, because you don't want to essentially make the same mistakes twice. But you will be called out of your bluff if you make 2 mistakes to the same person. Very interesting. Alrighty, that is where I will leave it. I'm wishing you a wonderful morning, noon, or night, wherever you are in the ether of this time and space.